Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 290.
Senate Bill 290 by Senator Venberg, also Representative Amabile, concerning natural medicine and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move Senate Bill 290, the committee report, the Finance Committee report, and the appropriation. Is there an appropriations report? And the appropriations report.
To the appropriations report.
So in the appropriations report, we got the money that we need to enact this ballot measure.
All right.
And I ask for a yes vote on the appropriations report.
Is there any further discussion on the appropriations report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the appropriations report. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The appropriation report is adopted. To the finance report, Representative Amabile. Representative Amabile.
Yeah, in finance, we put on several amendments at the request of stakeholders, and I ask for a yes vote.
All right. Is there any further discussion on the Finance Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The finance report is adopted. We're to the bill. Representative Amabile.
Thank you so much. So let me just tell everybody that this bill is the result of the citizens of Colorado having passed ballot measure 122. And it turns out a lot of people here in this building didn't vote for 122. And I'll just tell you right now, I didn't. I voted no on 122. But nonetheless, a majority of Coloradans voted yes on ballot measure 122. And this bill is designed, is written to give fidelity to the will of the voters. And to the extent that I think all of us here believe in direct democracy, that is what this bill is doing. It is enacting the provisions that were in the ballot measure. And there are two parts, two big parts. One is the regulated market that was in the ballot measure, and that sets up healing centers and licensed healers, and the ability for a licensed healer to purchase from a licensed manufacturer products to use in delivering this service. And in this second part of the bill and of the ballot measure, it allows for personal use and the ability to gift product that you cultivate in your home or on your property. And we did put some guardrails around personal use in the bill, and we also clarified what is now legal and what is still not legal. Like one of the gray areas in the ballot measure was what happens if you sell or give one of these products to someone who's under 21. And in the ballot measure, it said that's a fine, but in fact, in our current law, it says, no, that is a crime. And so we just clarified that that is the way it is, and that you can't drive while you're intoxicated, and you can't use heavy machinery, and some things like that. So there are some guardrails on the personal use, and then there is an entire regulatory structure on the regulated use. And I would like to move Amendment L035 and ask that it be displayed.
All right. That has been properly moved. And it is properly displayed. Tell us about the amendment.
Thank you. So there were a couple of different places where there were references to where these products could be cultivated. And this just clarifies that it's on your property outside of an enclosed and locked space. So you have to grow in an enclosed and locked space, but it could be in your garage, it could be in a shed, it could be in a bedroom, in a basement, but it can't occupy more than, and this isn't in the amendment, but it can't occupy more than 12 feet by 12 feet. And I ask for a yes vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L35? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L35. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. L35 is adopted. We're back to the bill. Representative Amabile. Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move L039 to the bill and ask that it be properly displayed.
All right, that has been properly moved.
So, colleagues,
Oh, well, one second. We're just getting it up here. Okay, now,
And
please
there it is.
proceed.
thank you. Colleagues, collecting information on drug use data is really important for a lot of reasons. It helps to inform policy, public health initiatives, treatment programs, and research. So some of those data points help us identify trends and patterns, assess effectiveness of interventions, target resources, identify vulnerable populations, monitor and address public health concerns, and support research, all of which are germane to this particular bill. Collecting data on drug use is really essential for understanding and addressing the complex issue of substance use and its associated harms and benefits. This information can help inform evidence-based policies, interventions, research, and ultimately improving public health and well-being. With that, I have brought forth this amendment that goes into a great deal of detail about what kind of information should be included as part of the data collection. And so if one were to look at this tome of a bill, it does refer to the state licensing authority has authority to collect available and relevant data necessary to perform functions and duties necessary to administer this Article 50. And this bill simply inserts a new paragraph below that stating that the state licensing authority, in coordination with other relevant agencies, shall request available and relevant data concerning law enforcement indices, adverse health events, impacts to healthcare systems, consumer protection claims, and behavioral health impacts related to natural medicine product, and natural medicine businesses. The state licensing authority shall include the available and relevant data in the report required pursuant to subsection 1G of this section. I ask for your aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I believe that this is a good amendment. And this is data that we would like to have. And so I would also like to ask for a yes on this amendment.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of L39. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. All right. The ayes have it. L39 is passed. We're back to the bill. Is there any further discussion? Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, obviously, as the sponsor had mentioned, regardless of whatever one's personal feelings are, this is something that was approved by the voters of Colorado, and so we have to make sure that we work within those parameters here. But as I was reading through this bill, and some issues came to my attention, one of the concerns that I had was that when it comes to implementing something like this, obviously we lived through this in like 2012, 13, 14, when marijuana was legalized, and trying to figure out, hey, how do we regulate this? It's legal, but how do we make sure that we're also maintaining the appropriate safeguards and balance in society to ensure that you don't have, like, say, a dispensary opening up, immediately next to an elementary school or something like that. And so a big component of how that was done through the ability of local municipalities and local jurisdictions to regulate basically the time and the place that a lot of these legal activities occurred, but they had to have that time, place, location regulation through their local control authority. And so as I read through this bill and was trying to wrap my mind around, hey, how do we implement this? How is this going to apply? How do we make sure that we can respect the will of the people of Colorado, but also do so in an appropriate manner that has the guardrails that we have for everything else in our society, whether it's marijuana, whether it's alcohol, you can go down that road as far as you want. How do we do that? And so a lot of how that was accomplished is accomplished through local control and through ensuring that local governments, local municipalities have the ability to put the appropriate guardrails around these voter-approved activities. And so with that in mind, I move Amendment L026 and ask for it to be displayed.
All right, L026 has been properly moved. And it is properly displayed. Please tell us about the amendment. Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this amendment does here, very simple, all it does is it adds the word participants onto page 14, line 8. So what we're talking about here, in the bill, you have individuals that are able to either help or facilitate. Facilitate is the term that's used in the bill. You have somebody that can help facilitate another individual as they utilize these natural medicines, psilocybin. It lists out a whole list of what these medicines are. And so it's talking about, what their licensing is, how they get licensed to do it, the safeguards that are in place. It talks all about that on pages 12, 13, and 14. There's like 9, so there's like 10, 11, 12 different things in this one particular section that they have to do. And so what this amendment does here is it's just adding the word participants into one of the parameters for these facilitators. It says that a facilitator can provide and supervise natural medicine services at an authorized location that is not a healing center's licensed premises, including a healthcare facility. So you have these natural medicine centers. Those have to be licensed, and the bill lays out how those are licensed. And then you can have other centers, like a healthcare center that's not a licensed healing center, it's just a healthcare center, a healthcare facility, or a private residence. And so that's what this bill is addressing. It's addressing the fact that by inserting participant before the term private residence, it's clarifying that this has to be conducted at a private residence that's owned by one of the participants, either the individual that's taking the natural medicines or the facilitator. But it has to be somebody that's involved in this activity. It has to be their private residence. And the reason that that is so important is because if we don't specify that this is the participant's private residence, effectively what this does is this allows this this usage of these natural medicines to occur at any private residence. And if it can occur at any private residence, even if it is not one of the participants' private residence, then unfortunately that opens an awful lot of doors to a lot of different things that I saw during my time in code enforcement. So if you have this activity occurring not at one of the participants' residences, effectively, what you've done is you've sidestepped a local government's ability to control basically home-based occupations, and you've now said, hey, any residents here, you can have an occupation, you can have these business practices occur. Now, most municipalities, most local governments are going to have regulations around home-based occupations just because they need to preserve basically the quality and the environment and the safety of that surrounding community. They need to do really boring things like make sure, hey, if you're going to have a home-based occupation, you got to have sufficient parking for the folks that are going to be coming and going from that home-based business or occupation. You got to make sure that you have sufficient, in some cases, like sewage hookup that, depending on how many people are we going to be able to safely and appropriately maintain that residence. Lot of honestly mundane things go into this, but again, it's for the ultimate benefit of the surrounding community. And so by inserting participants here, again, what we're doing is we're ensuring that we're not creating language that sidesteps the ability of one of these facilitators to effectively have home-based occupations at unlicensed locations. And I can tell you from personal experience that this is something that, while it may be kind of boring and mundane in this context, the residents of that community absolutely are attuned to that and they're aware of that. The number of complaints that I received when I was working in local government around suspected unlicensed home-based businesses, I mean, it's numerous. I received tons and tons and tons of complaints about those things because it affects the quality of that community. And so in order to ensure that municipalities and local governments have the ability to have that level playing field and make sure that these facilitators and these practitioners are engaging in these activities at a participant's residence instead of any residence, what this does is it preserves that level playing field that all other home-based occupations and activities have to comply with by saying that, hey, if you're going to do this for a business, that's fine. You either have to get that home-based business license or you have to do it in the participant's business. Because if it is, residence, excuse me, because if it is in the participant's residence, well then, hey, it's your residence. You can really do what you want with that if you're a participant. So for that reason, I would ask for an aye vote on Amendment L026.
All right, Representative from Abilene.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This a very important part of this ballot measure is that it states very clearly that cities cannot stop this from happening. And so in fidelity to the ballot measure, I ask for your no vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on L26? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L26. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no? The noes have it. L26 is lost. We're back to the bill. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, again, going back to that same conversation and that same topic around the fact that we already have for basically everything else in our society, these time, these place, these manner restrictions, and the ability of local government to implement those restrictions to ensure that they are protecting the environment and the quality of their local community. I think it's incredibly important that we continue to go down this path and continue to have this discussion because, again, this is something that is incredibly important to these local communities. This is something that generates an awful lot of discussion and dialogue. And so toward that end, I move Amendment L027 and ask for it to be displayed.
All right, L27 has been properly moved and is now displayed. Tell us about the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, this is in the same venue of recognizing the fact that the ability for a local government to be able to make these decisions that they can make already about pretty much everything else that happens in their jurisdiction is incredibly important to that jurisdiction, to the community members and the individuals that live and work in that jurisdiction. And so what this amendment does, it touches a couple of different places in the bill, but it basically just ensures consistency across the law and allows local governments to have the ability to regulate services in residence, again, under that home occupation category. And it removes some language that might conflict with other parts of the law and other provisions, other things that cities are doing. Because again, you have to have this balancing act between the local ordinance, what local municipalities or local governments are doing, and the state law. This bill has a lot of information about the state law, and so we just want to make sure that we're preserving the status quo and we're not carving out overly broad abilities or ways for this one particular product that doesn't exist for any other product. And so by touching a couple of different places in here, specifically it talks about Article 50 of Title 44. That's a new title that is, that is a new article that is added in the bill. And that's talking about how the state can regulate these products. So what this amendment does is also says that local governments also have no more authority than the state does, and it refers to Article 50 of Title 44. But it says that the local government should have the same authority that the state has to be able to regulate these substances in a time, place, and manner regulation. And that's very important verbiage, that time, place, and manner regulation. So that's verbiage that actually is also used in First Amendment situations. And I bring that up to highlight the fact that that language being used in First Amendment situations gives huge deference to the fact that there is a very highly protected activity that is occurring and that in no way should be curtailed. All it says is time, place, and manner restrictions. And so those things exist for the First Amendment. And so this amendment here that's before us, L027, also seeks to just continue that status quo and say that the authority that the state is granted under this bill to be able to make those regulatory decisions ought to also extend to the local government, and it ought to extend to local governments with the exact same language that is used to guard the or to put the guardrails around First Amendment stuff. So basically, if time, place, and manner restrictions are acceptable in a First Amendment context, then they ought to also be acceptable in this context here as well. And so I would ask for an aye vote on Amendment L027.
Thank you, Representative Amalale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for the same reasons that I just stated, and because this has been stakeholdered and really 4 months have been spent talking to all the relevant stakeholders, but I ask for a no vote on this amendment because it really is inconsistent with the plain language of the ballot measure. So I ask for a no vote.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on L027? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L027. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, the noes clearly have it. L027 fails. To the bill, Representative Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, I think this is very important. This is something that I know is very important to our local communities. And so I just want to make sure that we're not creating a situation here where we're going to have a lot of angst in communities about how this ballot measure is being rolled out. And so with that in mind, I move Amendment L028 and ask for it to be properly displayed.
L028 has been properly moved and is displayed. Please tell us about your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, this is just trying to get at that fact that as currently drafted, I have concerns that this bill does not provide appropriate guardrails for a local community to be able to regulate where these facilities and how these facilitators are operating. We know it's legal. We know that this is legal through a vote of the people, but there's many other things that are also legal through a vote of the people or through the Constitution or whatever the other thing is that makes them legal, that are legal, but that also have some guardrails around how those items or entities or things can be used or implemented. Again, think alcohol, think marijuana. They're legal, but there's rules and there's regulations around how those ought to be used. This amendment here just gets at another part of the bill here where it's talking about facilities. And so when it's talking about a facility, it just adds the language in to say, so as written currently, the bill talks about the regulation of licensed premises, and then there's rules that allow that natural medicine healing center to be co-located with another medicinal healing center or a healthcare facility. So after the word facility, it just also adds in there language that says that a local jurisdiction has the ability to enact an ordinance or regulation governing the time, place, and manner of the operations of the premises. Pretty much every local government already has this. They already have those ordinances or those resolutions that are in place to govern these things. They already have regulations around like the operation of construction equipment, the sounding of bells or alarms, when certain activities can or cannot happen. And that's done in order to preserve the general ambiance, the general environment, the safety, the security, the flavor of that particular local community. So again, what this amendment does here is it just acknowledges the fact that local communities already do this. This is something that is really integral to how a local community builds and presents their unique character, their unique flavor, and that in this particular regard as well, we need to ensure that local communities have the exact same ability to have these time, place, and manner restrictions that they already have, that they already exercise for pretty much everything else that happens in their jurisdiction. And we need to make sure that we're creating just the appropriate safeguards for this legal activity because the voters have made it legal, but we need to make sure that we're creating the appropriate safeguards for this so that you don't have situations where, you know, if the community decides, hey, we really don't want one of these located next to an elementary school. We really don't want one of these located, right in the downtown area. That this amendment gives that local community that authority that they already have to regulate these things. And so I would ask for your aye vote on Amendment L028.
Representative Amabile.
Point of pride. Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, it does in the bill say that local jurisdictions can put in regulations around the time, place, and manner. And so it's covered, and any expansion of that would be lacking fidelity to the voters. And so I ask again for a no vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on L028? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L028 to SB23-290. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The noes have it. I'm sorry, L028 fails. Representative Evans.
Well, the third time clearly was not a charm, so this will be my fourth and last attempt here. I move Amendment L029 and ask for it to be properly displayed.
Okay, L029 has been properly moved and is properly displayed. Please tell us about your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what this amendment does here is toward the very end of the bill, it's talking again about these community-based use and healing centers. And so what it does is this amendment just removes three words from the bill. It talks about beneficial community-based use and healing, supported use, or related services. And the amendment just strikes that or related services terminology. And the reason that it does that is Or related services is actually incredibly broad language. Or related services without any other guardrails or any other definitions can be an almost limitless, all-encompassing catch-all to describe other activities that might be used. So here we're talking particularly the personal use, the consumption or personal use of these natural medicines or medicinal products. But to talk about that in context of any related services really opens the door incredibly broadly. And as long as you can tie any sort of relation to that personal use, this is allowing, like I said, almost a limitless number of things to be able to occur in that community, in that potentially residential area, school zone, wherever it happens to be. And it doesn't provide the appropriate ability for a local government or a local municipality to be able to say, you know what, we draw the line at a certain point. We don't think that, I can give you a personal example of a neighborhood complaint that I once had, where they were literally arguing about firewood and how long the firewood had been cured. And they were able to tie that through this really twisted sequence of events. They were able to tie that to the particular code in hand. And so when I see related services here, I can think of situations and I can think of encounters that I've had where somebody might tie a really, really random item all the way back to the personal use of this natural medicine and try to roll it in under this or related services term here. And so I believe that's overly broad, and so I would ask for an aye vote on Amendment L029, just to tighten that language up again and be a little bit more clear about what we mean by personal use. Personal use is community-based use, healing, or supported use, but it's not any other related thing that you might be able to think of. And so I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think I'm going to ask you to vote no on this amendment as well. But one of the things that is encompassed in the related services is that typically this is sort of a three-part thing. You go first, you have a consultation, then you have the day when you are administered these medications, and then you come back to see how you're doing and to get counseling or get additional therapies. And so that would be limited by taking that out, and we don't want to do that. And also it is in the ballot measure that we shouldn't do that, and I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on L029? Seeing none, is there, the question before us is the adoption of L029 to SB23-290. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All in favor say no. Okay, the noes have it. L029 fails. To the bill. Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L041 and ask that it be displayed.
Okay, L041 has been moved and is properly displayed.
So members, what this amendment does, it requires the board of the working board that is going to be assembled for the mushrooms to work with the tribal nations and working groups to develop an equity program and provision that will look at, and we're turning the May to a shell, and that's going to prioritize equity as they're looking at licensing considerations for mushrooms. And this was brought to us by advocates who want their voices to be heard in this space. And so we're asking for your yes vote on this.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just would add to that in the second part of this, in the bill, we set up a working group of indigenous people. And this second part is saying that they're going to work together with the federal tribes, and that also was stated, but this is a clarification of that. It's a good amendment, and I urge everybody to please vote yes.
Okay, is there any further discussion on L041? Seeing none, the question before us is L041 to SB23-290. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, well, the ayes have it. L041 passes. Oh, can we take, we'll stand in a brief recess. The committee will come back to order. Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L024 and ask that it be properly displayed. Thank you.
Excellent. L024 has been moved and is properly displayed. Please tell us about your amendment.
I will gladly do so, Madam Chair. This particular amendment pertains to Part 3 of this bill, beginning on page 56, which discusses the variety of license types that are available to the natural medicine business licenses. And what this particular amendment does is add to the language. It doesn't strike anything. It just adds language stipulating that the licensing authority, the state licensing authority, will not issue or renew a license unless the applicant or licensee files in the form and manner determined by the licensing authority proof of financial responsibility. And it specifies an amount of that. And essentially what this does, if you look down at subparagraph 2, the proof of financial responsibility must be in the form of liability a liability insurance policy. And this is really important to these licensees who are doing business. Sorry, it was kind of loud over there.
Oh, folks, will you please keep it down a little bit so we can hear Representative Frizzell? Thank you very much.
This is really important because it specifically covers this. Insurance would cover bodily injury to a person, including injury caused by the intentional conduct of the applicant, licensee, or agent thereof. It is not required to cover bodily injury caused with intent to harm by the applicant, licensee, or agent thereof. This is essentially protecting that business owner. And so I would ask for an aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hartsook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. Now, back in the day, when Timothy Leary started doing his experimentation, he didn't have any of this. But in today's modern world, where we've got regulations and businesses, even Timothy Leary would have to comply. We've got the amendment here that's putting in regulations so you make sure you've got the right liability, the right coverage. I know from every business perspective I've ever been involved in, you have to carry that coverage. Because if you make a mistake or you do something that ends up being proven wrong in court, you have to have liability. Healthcare workers carry malpractice. Businesses carry liability if something goes wrong in construction. So there's absolutely no reason that we should not have the exact same thing in this new career field. We need to make sure the people are protected. We need to make sure the businesses are protected. Even Timothy Leary, I think, would agree to this. I urge an aye vote on this amendment.
Thank you. Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so I would just like to say that Rep. Frizzell and I did discuss this amendment. And the reason that I'm going to ask you for a no vote is because asking somebody who is trying to enter the natural medicine space to have to put up $150,000 is a lot. Like for some of us, maybe it's not. But for most people, that's really a very, very high bar. And we don't know, is that the right amount? Should it be some smaller amount? Is any amount needed? Will there be an insurance market? What will that insurance market look like? And so this is going to get covered in rulemaking because we do want to make sure we protect consumers. But for us to sort of pot shot at it here and pick a number doesn't seem like a very organized or smart way to go about it. And for that reason, I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Ricks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes. So I asked for a no vote on this. This will require really stiff financial barriers to entry for licensing, and this is how we keep Black and brown people out of these types of opportunities. Insurance companies are not offering this type of coverage right now, so we ask for a no vote.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on L024? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L024. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. Okay, the noes have it. I'm sorry, but L024 fails. To the bill. Is there any further discussion on SB23-290? Representative Ricks.
I move L043 to SB290. And ask that it be displayed. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So-
SB23, L043 to SB23-290 has been moved and is properly displayed. Please explain your amendment.
So this amendment is going to define the federally recognized American tribes in accordance with the federally recognized Indian Tribe Act. And so it's very clarified all through the bill and sections, just to be clear on who we're talking about in the bill. And I ask for your aye vote.
Okay, Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, or is there any further discussion on L043? Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of L043. All in favor of L043, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. No. L043. Okay, a division has been called. Representative Amabile.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say one more time that I would like everybody to vote yes on this amendment.
Thank you. Okay, the question, the question is the adoption of L043 to SB23-290. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. All those in favor of L043, please stand and remain standing or raise your hand and keep it raised until the count is taken. Okay, thank you. You may be seated. All those opposed, please stand or remain standing in one place until the count is taken, or raise your hand. You may be seated. Amendment L043 is passed. To the bill, Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as we are talking about natural medicine, I think it's important to take this opportunity and to expand the definition to include another natural medicine that has been quite controversial in our culture recently, and to allow for our folks to be able to access that one as well. And so with that, I move Amendment L040 and ask that it be displayed.
Thank you. L040 has been properly moved and is properly displayed. Please explain your amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this amendment simply adds to the definition of natural medicine in all relevant parts, progesterone. And so I would ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Representative Amabile.
This definitely was not in the ballot measure, and I ask for a no vote.
Thank you. The question before us is the passage of L040. Was there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L040. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. To the L040 fails. To the bill, Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do just want to say that these medicines actually do have a lot of promise in treating people with mental illness, with depression, with anxiety, and I want us to do everything we can to honor the will of the voters, and I want us to move forward with optimism that this is going to make a difference for our state, and that it is going to help people who really need help and who haven't been helped by more traditional medicines that have been offered in the past. And so I urge everyone to please vote yes on this bill.
Thank you. Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Chair. As I'm reading down through this bill, there was some confusion on my behalf, and I'm not even a participant in these types of medicines, and yet I was still confused by some of this, but I realized that these healing center things are pretty broadly defined, and so I move Amendment 042 and ask it be properly displayed.
L042 has been properly moved and is properly displayed. Please tell us about your amendments, Representative Bottoms.
Thank you. In the Healing Center, I want to include this amendment that it also should include that this means a pregnancy resource center, except not that withstanding any requirement of this Article 170 to the contrary, a pregnancy resource center is not subject to any licensing requirements of Article 50 of Title 44. In the understand this healing center, I think this would be a natural place to put the pregnancy resource center. It seems to fit the bill, and it seems to fit the ballot measure of which this was taken. And so I would strongly urge an aye vote on Amendment 042. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on L042? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L042. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. I'm sorry, but L042 fails. To the bill, Representative Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. So yesterday in committee, this was brought up, and quite plain and simple, we had the indigenous people in the chamber speaking against this. There are a lot of people that do not want this bill to happen just simply because of one very easy reason. The more government gets involved in what private citizens do behind closed doors is their business. We brought up statistics yesterday as to how many issues this has been brought up with the police departments across the state. Excuse me, it's pretty loud, if you don't mind.
Oh, folks, could you please simmer down a little bit so we can hear Representative Weinberg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, there were statistics brought up in committee as to how many issues across the state our police departments, our EMTs, our firefighters are dealing with, and it's not many, if anything at all. In fact, the direct quote was double digits out of the millions in this state. Why are we trying to have government interference with something that is not currently a problem? We are creating laws that are going to create problems. And if we don't take the statistics as they are and as they are as fact, then we ourselves are going to be back here creating legislation to fix that. Take a step back. There's not an issue. Don't create one. Let's pass good legislation and make sure that government remains small and out of our private lives. I urge a no on this bill.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on SB23-290? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of SB23-290. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. SB23-290 is adopted.